Without any further ado, I'd like to announce our second day keynote speaker. Please welcome Andrea Provaglio, I hope I pronounced that right, who will be speaking about evolving into agility from top to bottom, starting with, of course, company leadership.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So, dobro jutro, is that what you said? Okay, and that was all my Serbian for today. Okay. And you can choose. I mean, I can give this keynote in English, if you like, or in Italian. It's up to you. I would go with English, right? Okay, good, good. So I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Novi Sad. It's my first time with this community. And it's always exciting for me to learn what people do in different parts of the country, of the world, and so on. So it's an honor, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you guys for being here on a Sunday morning. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate the effort. So, so why are you here, by the way? What do you want to get from today? What? Grow, to grow, grow. That's a good. That's the theme of the conference, right? Growing. Yeah. Okay. Just out of curiosity, how many developers we have in the room? Wow. Okay. Managers. Sorry, guys. You're outnumbered today. Okay. So this is a developers conference. Good. I've been a developer for a long time. In my previous life, in my previous incarnation professionally, I was a developer. I've been writing a lot of code. I've been teaching people how to write a lot of code. I moved to the United States and I taught people how to write decent code. And then I got sick and tired of code. No, actually not. I still like it, but I became more and more interested in the people writing code rather than the technology itself. Because what we do, of course, it's an intellectual activity, and it all depends on the way people are able to express themselves on the job. And by express themselves, what I mean is being able to give their contribution, being able to interact with their colleagues, to solve a problem together, to innovate together. So I became more interested in that part. And so about 12 years ago, I started looking at this thing called Agile, which is a very, very old stuff. I don't want to talk about Agile today. Agile goes back to the 80s, so it's an old stuff. No, I'm serious. It has evolved since. So I don't want to talk about Agile as a production methodology. Okay, yeah, I'm more interested in agility as a mindset. I'm more interested in what it means to be agile as a person, as a team, and as a company. That's what I really is meaningful for me. So I became interested in that. And of course, first I started working with single teams, and then I started working with groups of teams, and then I started working with the entire company. So I moved out of the technology island, and I started working with management, of course, and then with different parts of the organization, including, for instance, HR, finance, sometimes procurement. Because the thing is, agility is not something that you can relegate to the writing of code. It's a way the organization works. And of course, it's also a production approach. So what I'd like to talk about today, and I need to check the time, yes, okay, I think we are on time. What I'd like to talk about today is some of the challenges that I frequently face when I work with clients, and I try to help them grow, at least since that's the theme of the conference, grow into a more agile and adaptive organization, and not just using Scrum, for instance, okay? Which very few people actually do. They all do. Apparently 90% of the people I meet, they all use some variation of Scrum, but nobody's really doing Scrum, okay? So I'd like to share some of the challenges that I face. I'd like to give you some insight. I'd like to also to add a little bit of philosophy. And of course, I hope we'll be having a good time. So let's start with this guy. Do you guys notice? Because the different countries are not really familiar with this character. It's a movie character. Are you familiar with this guy? No, he's from an American movie, which is called National Lampoon's Animal House. And it's a very funny movie. It's an old movie. And this guy basically is a student at a college. And he's a kind of a party animal. He's a very funny character. You can really relate to this guy. He wants to have fun. And yeah, as you can see, that's the toga party. And so it's a very sociable person. At the same time, this guy has a tendency, for instance, to eat a little bit too much, as you can probably guess. He has a tendency of drinking a little bit too much, okay? So he's he's a very sociable, he's a very funny character, but at the same time, it's not easy for him to carry on this kind of life. So I have a question for you. Now, let's say that you are let's say, coach, whatever that means, and somebody asks you to go to Bluto. Bluto is the name of the character. So go to Bluto and transform Bluto, okay? You want Bluto to become more healthy, more fit, more nimble, more agile, okay? You want to transform Bluto. Now, if you had to transform this guy, would you take on such a challenge? If somebody told you, please transform Bluto into a healthy and agile person, would you take on this challenge? Nope. Yep. I see a lot of no here. And the reason is very simple. It's impossible to change Bluto unless Bluto wants to change. You cannot change people. People change because they want to. Okay. So when we go into organizations and we try to change organizations, the question is, can we really do that? Can we really help an organization to grow if the organization is not willing to grow, is not willing to change? That's not a simple question. So, for instance, one of the things that I've learned working with organization is that real change happens only when you're able to change the underlying paradigms by which we operate. So let's take Bluto. Okay? For Bluto, having a good time is an important value. Okay? For other people, being healthy is an important value. Unless we don't change with these underlying paradigms, we shift from just having a hell of a life and having fun all the time and drink and eat and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's shift to being healthy, for instance. Unless you make this transition, it's very hard that you will see a change in behavior. So in this analogy, the grass is what you can observe from the outside. But the grass is an outcome of the underlying paradigms of the soil. So when I work with organizations, of course, I also address technical problems, like how do we descale our processes, for instance. That's a technical thing. Or which tools do we want to use, that's a technical thing. But that's what is visible. The process, the tools, this is what is visible. But part of change is changing the underlying paradigms. It's changing the values we live on. And one thing I've learned is that, oops, sorry, let's go back. Okay. Change comes from this thing which is called leadership. Now, leadership is a very confusing term. If you look up on Amazon and you search for books on leadership, at the moment there are about 95,000 books on leadership. So it's a very huge and confusing subject. And I've been working on this idea of leadership, for what it means leadership in our world, for at least 5 years now. My own most recent definition of leadership is what brings you from here to there intentionally. If you are intentionally able to make a change, to go from here to there, that's an expression of leadership. It could be individual leadership or collective leadership, but change comes from leadership. Change comes from this idea that we want to get somewhere. Okay. Management is a different thing. Management usually is about making sure that we do things the way they're supposed to be done. And this could be, for instance, making sure that the budget is used appropriately, that time is used appropriately, that infrastructure is working appropriately, and so on and so on and so on. So management is very, very important, but it's more about making sure that we do things the way they're supposed to be done. And leadership is bringing change. So there are two different forces. They are not necessarily in opposition to each other. I'm just saying that we need both in organizations. We need good management, and also we need the intention to change, and that comes from leadership, collective or individual. So there are a number of paradigms that change when you try to move from a more traditional organization to a more adaptive organization. I don't want to use the term agile, I prefer the term adaptive. And I mean an organization which is able to adapt, to change with its environment. So when you make this kind of transition, there are a number of paradigms that change. For instance, we tend to move from hierarchies of people at the top, at the middle, at the bottom. We tend to move to networks of people. Like a team is a small network which can be interconnected with a larger network of other networks, for instance. We shift from profit, which is fundamental. We need profit in an organization because we need money to pay salaries and to make business. So we need profit. But what we observe now is a shift from profit to purpose, meaning that profit has become, for many organizations, has become a mean to an end. We need profit to achieve our goal. It's not that we need profit because profit is our goal. We need profit because that allows us to reach a certain goal, which could be anything. Could be making people's life easier because you have a wonderful app for ordering pizza in 5 seconds. I don't know, whatever, but you're making people's life better. Another change is from directing people, telling people what to do, to empower people to make decisions by themselves. Because by doing so, by decentralizing the decisional processes, we shorten what we call the decisional latency time. Decisions are made faster when they don't have to go through different levels. Okay? If you have an information on the field and it needs to go up 5 levels in the organization, then the decision is made here, and then it goes down so that you can actuate the decision. That takes a long time, and possibly it's not the best decision. So we try to empower people so that certain decisions are made closer to where they are actually implemented. That's another paradigm that's just changing, blaming others rather than taking responsibility. So as the moment you start empowering people, you want people feel responsible. Okay? People feel responsible when they are part of the decision. So you empower them rather than blaming them. And estimating and planning, blah, 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 blah. So there are a number of paradigms that change. The one I would like to focus on this, in this talk is specifically the change from vertical to horizontal leadership. Vertical leadership is when you have someone who decides and other people follow. And horizontal leadership is when we decide together and then we go together. Okay, that's a very simple definition, probably oversimplifying, but that's the idea. When you have a team, I'm sure you guys have heard of the term self-organizing team. Okay? When a team self-organizes for certain things, that's an example of horizontal leadership. Okay, it means that the team can make decisions together and then they implement that decision. So let me tell you a story. This is a real client of mine. The name is not ActiLife. I changed the name of the company, but this is a client of mine. So I've known this client for many years, and these guys are not IT people. They are a large global company, but their business is not in software. They sell devices. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what, but they sell devices. So hardware stuff, hardware. And when they started, of course, they also had a small IT department inside of the company, because these devices need to be controlled by software, of course. Okay, so they had a few teams that were working inside the company. Then, at some point, the company became more successful, and they started to have the need to deal with multiple types of users, so they had a project manager or program manager, whatever you want to call these guys, that would interact with the development team, and then they became more successful, and so they started to work with communities, not with single users, but with communities, different communities with different needs. They started to work with a global market because they were so successful that now their products are everywhere, almost. And then they also started to have strategic partners, other companies who wanted to do business with them. Okay? And as you can imagine, the number of project managers increased. The development team increased a little bit, but the thing is they had more and more and more products to take care of. And all of these requests were sent to the IT department, okay, to the central IT department in a somewhat uncoordinated way. And then there was another thing that I noticed working with this company is that part of the culture of this company was they were very competitive. They thought at themselves as achievers, people who set a goal for themselves and they go get it. Okay, achievers. That's a general culture in this company. Not of the single people, but the general culture is this one. And they had, in the cafeteria, a private part of the company is not visible to outside people, but in the cafeteria, they had a large 50 inches display monitor with the top sellers for the quarter, meaning these are our marketing people or product managers or project manager who sold most the last quarter. So they created competition inside the company, of course, because people wanted to be the top seller. And as a result, at some point, we heard a very symbolic, loud cry from these guys, and the cry was, "Help! Okay, they're killing us. Okay, they're killing us. Too much pressure. Okay, too much uncoordinated pressure." Okay, every product manager wanted to have something now or yesterday, and everything was urgent, and so on and so on and so on. You know the story, right? I'm sure that I see people nodding. Yeah, okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, I know where you've been. It's not uncommon, by the way. It's not uncommon in our industry. I've seen this many times. And so let me give you a little bit of theory behind this. Because, of course, we could try to address the problem at the process level. In fact, they called me in, and they asked me, "Oh, Andrea, can you help us restructure the IT department so they become more efficient?" Okay. Well, it's not a problem with the IT department. I mean, the IT department, they are very smart guys, actually. Okay. And it's not a matter of being more efficient. It's a matter of being more effective, not efficient. Okay. So they called me in to tell me, "Okay, can you make these guys more efficient?" And I thought, maybe not. Maybe that's not your real problem. Okay. Your real problem is another one. Oh, by the way, I didn't get the gig at the end. Okay. When I told them the real problem is somewhere else, I didn't get the gig with them. Okay. Because of course they wanted to fix the IT department. Being honest, Anyway, so. Let me give you a little bit of theory behind this. You can read the fine prints if you like, but actually the kind of dynamic they were into is a very well-known dynamic in system thinking. And it's called tragedy of the commons. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a lake. Okay, there's a lake. On one side of the lake, there is one fisherman. Okay, and the fisherman is fishing from the lake. And the thinking is very simple. The more I fish, the more profit I make. The more profit I make, the more I can fish, because I can buy more boats and so on and so on. So the more profit, more fishing, the more fishing, more profit. Makes sense to me. And then there is another fisherman on the other side of the lake. They don't know about each other, okay? And the other fisherman, of course, is also thinking, "Oh, well, the more I fish, the more profit, the more profit, the more I fish," okay? Makes perfect sense. What they do not know is that the effect on the lake is the cumulative fishing from both of them, okay? And then what happens that the total fishing after some time, it basically damages the ability of the lake to replenish itself, Okay? Fish are not able to reproduce itself at the rate at which it is fished. Okay? So each fisherman starts noticing a decrease in the amount of fish, and so they need to put more effort into fishing, because to get the same profit as before, I need to fish more. And what they do not know is that by doing so, because of course they hit the sustainable fishing capacity, what each fisherman do not know is that by fishing more, not only they are damaging the other fishermen, they are also damaging themselves. Because the more I fish, the more the other guy fishes, and the more the other guy fishes, the more I need to fish. Okay? And that's the reason why it's called the tragedy of the commons. Because it's a tragedy that people don't see how they are damaging the system and they're damaging themselves in the process. Okay? That's why it's called the tragedy of the commons. And this is a metaphor. I mean, the fishing is a metaphor, but the actual resource could be, for instance, a financial resource, or could be or not an ecological resource like this one. Could be any kind of resource. Now, depending on the type of resource, there are strategies that we can use to fix the problem or to try to mitigate the problem. Like, for instance, if it is a financial resource, you can just put more money into this resource. Okay, you get finance going into the financial resource. That's one possibility. But with an ecological resource, we need to do something different. Sometimes we need to regulate access to the resource. Okay, that's why we have fishing regulations. Because without fishing regulations, people would fish too much. Okay? Or mushroom. If you want to go and pick mushrooms, we need to regulate that so that the resource remains sustainable. Okay? We need a regulation on top of that. Now, of course, in my example, the metaphor is that the IT department in ActiLife was the lake. And the fishermen were the project managers trying to fish intellectual products out of the IT department. Because then again, what we do when we write code is we create products. We create, it's a strange kind of product because it's not a tangible product, it's dematerialized, okay? It's not like this product, which you can count and weigh and touch, okay? What we do is create a non-material product, but it's an intellectual product. So the project managers, they were trying to fish intellectual products from the lake. Way too much. And of course, you could say, yes, but in theory, the project managers, they would see each other. They knew that they were asking different things to the IT department. Yes, except that they didn't want to see each other. Because everybody wanted to be the top seller. Okay? So you see that the problem there. Okay? If you try to incentivize people to achieve personal individualistic goals, then they don't look at each other. They don't care about each other. Okay? Also, because this company has a culture of being achievers. Right? So the way we can fish intellectual products from an IT department, of course, is by political and psychological pressure. That's what we do, right? So sentences like, oh yes, but this thing is more urgent than anything else. Or our partners, our strategic partners need this now. Or, oh, that's the greatest business opportunity. Yeah, we need to pursue that because it's great for business. Or, I committed to your deadline. Okay. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, yeah. And then the old-time classic always works. That's what the CEO wants. Yeah, that's CEO or any other kind of god in your company. Okay, anybody who has power of life and death over you. Okay, that's what this guy wants. Okay, good. So I told you I was going to talk a little bit about not only storytelling, not only some theory, but also I wanted to give you some philosophy behind this. Now, there is a word in Buddhism, which is this word here. It's called avijja. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's a very old concept. It's 2,500 years old. Okay, so it's a very old concept. And avijja is actually, let's put it this way. Vijja, without the A, means clear knowledge. That's what it means. Okay, clear knowledge of something. Not the knowledge that you can get from a book, but the kind of knowledge that you get from experience. Okay, clear knowledge of something. Okay, avidya is the lack of clear knowledge. It's frequently translated in English as ignorance, but it's a very specific type of ignorance. Is that kind of ignorance that prevents you from seeing things as they really are. It's the kind of ignorance that prevents you from seeing things as they really are, which is what was happening to our dear project managers in ActiLife. They were engulfed in avidya. They were unable to see things as they really were because they didn't want to. Okay, you see my point. For instance, the background of this slide is a cosmological model before Copernicus, when we thought that the Earth was the center of the universe, and then evidence told us, you know what, the wrong perspective. It's not like that. Okay, but then again, avidya can mean everything. Like, can be very, very subtle. That's what I'm trying to say. So, how do you work with avidya in companies? Because I remember one of my first slides with the grass and the soil. I told you, most of the time I work on the grass, but I also try to work on the soil, because the grass is a consequence. And so when I try to work on the soil, one thing that I've learned is kind of effective is the ability of people to actually listen. And by listening, I'm not just talking about hearing words. I'm talking about a specific type of listening with a specific intent. Okay? And let me tell you a little bit more about listening. So, first of all, listening is a fundamental leadership skill. And the reason is very simple. You cannot lead anyone if you're not aware of what's going on. If you are detached from your environment, okay, you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead anyone. It's a fundamental leadership skill. And it changes the way you interact with your environment. So that's why it's so important. Also, as you can read, it changes everything. And there are different ways in which we can listen. Now, in this part of the presentation, I'm going to use the terminology from a thing called Theory U by Otto Scharmer, and feel free, of course, to Google it and read about it if you wish. I'm not going to explain Theory U. What I'm saying is that I'm using some terms which honestly are not completely clear the first time you see them, so I'm going to explain them. Okay? So downloading is when basically you hear someone, but you don't really listen. Actually, what you do is you listen more to yourself than to the other person. Like, the other person is talking and you are already thinking about what you should reply, or you interrupt that person because you think you know what they want to say, and stuff like that. Okay, so you receive information, but you don't really own it. Okay, you just hear, so you listen to yourself, basically. And then there's a second level, which is a bit more effective, which is called factual listening. It means that you not only you hear that person, but you try to get the facts. You try to be objective, to listen to the facts, listen to the data, and try to understand what's going on. There's a third level, which is what we call empathic listening. Not only you listen to the information, to the facts, but also you try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You try to see the world from their perspective, not from your perspective. You try to, and that's why I'm saying it's important to create connections and to be able to lead people, because you try to see the problem or to see the world from a perspective which is not naturally yours, it's somebody else's perspective. Okay? And that requires empathy. And then there's another level, which is when you have the facts, when you are able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, at that point, your listening becomes an opportunity to generate new ideas, to generate something new. If you just stop at downloading, for instance, it's very unlikely that you will generate something new, very creative. you will probably just apply some pattern recognition. Okay, blah, 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 then blah, blah, blah. Okay, and that's period, right? But if you go deeper, then maybe you can actually be extremely creative. Now, the thing is, there are things that will help you go into different levels and things that will stop you from going to different levels. And for instance, what prevents us from going to factual listening is, what do you think this thing is? What this could be? The metaphor here, the analogy. Okay? Or, in other words, criticizing people, being critical. Is what we call the voice of judgment. Judgment means that you think that the other person or just the information you're receiving is inferior or superior to yours. Okay? You try to make these comparisons. And so you don't really listen, you just judge. Okay? And by judging, you're not actually listening to the facts, you are judging the facts, you're not listening to the facts. And what helps you is curiosity. Okay? So what helps you to stop your judgment for a second is honestly asking yourself the question, okay, so what is this guy actually telling me? Okay, what's in there? Okay, what is new in this? Okay, let's explore, let's be curious. Okay, so that's one thing. One thing that will prevent you from being empathic is what we call cynicism. Okay, you see, somebody comes to you with a problem and you say, yeah, blah, 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 yeah, talk to the end. Okay. Or in general, this person is telling you about some problem and you think, yeah, because you are incompetent, yeah, so you always whine, okay, you're such a loser. You know, this kind of things, or thinking, which basically means I don't want to have an emotional involvement in this. I want to keep emotional distance. I want to push this kind of empathy away. So cynicism is a very effective way to stop empathic listening, which is not a good thing, of course. And then, what prevents you from going to generative listening is one thing that we're all very familiar with, and it's called fear. Okay? Fear is what stops you from creating something new, because everything that is new is scary. That's the way the brain works. Okay? The main function of the brain is survival. That's the main reason why we have a brain, to survive and to reproduce. Okay? That's the main reason why we have a brain. Okay? Survival of the individual and survival of the species. Okay? So everything that is not status quo is a danger. Okay? Everything that is new, the very old part of our brains perceive as a possible danger. So the fear of something new will prevent you from creating something new. Okay? And it could be any kind of fear, like fear, for instance, of taking business risks, fear of losing status, for instance, in the company, or fear of the consequences on yourself of a bad decision, any kind of fear. But fear will prevent you from being innovative. And what helps you, of course, is courage. Okay? If you want to do something new, even something small or big, okay, you need the courage and take the leap. Okay? If you don't take the leap, then you stay in the same old, apparently safe environment. So, what I'm trying to say is that, so you see, I started talking about Bluto. I started talking about how hard it is to change someone who doesn't want to be changed. Okay? Actually, it is impossible to change someone who doesn't want to be changed. And then I started talking about the kind of change that we are introducing in organizations these days. And I told you that the change is not just superficial. The change needs to go deeper. And there are many things that we can change at a deeper level. And I suggested, remember, different principles that we can change, like moving from profit to purpose, from vertical to horizontal leadership, and so on. And I suggested that one thing that I found extremely effective, extremely useful in organizations is to help people improve their ability to really communicate with each other. Because what you want to do is you want to create networks of people who are intelligent together. Okay? You want networks of people who are intelligent together. My arithmetic definition of collective intelligence is when one brain plus one brain is more than two brains. Okay? And that's what you want to get. Okay? You want to create an environment where one brain plus one plus one plus one plus one is more than five. Okay? But that cannot happen if you're not able to create this network of people, and if people are not able to work together and interact really together. So I suggested listening. Now, listening in a specific way, it's actually a practice. So the effects of listening are fourfold. One effect is that, first of all, you develop more self-awareness. When you're interacting with someone, from time to time, every minute or so, every couple of minutes, you check with yourself and you ask yourself the questions. Am I being critical? Am I being cynical? Or am I scared? Okay? If you check with yourself from time to time and you try to realign and be more present and open, you develop self-awareness. You become more self-aware. You become more aware of what you're doing and how you're working. And by doing so, by this self-awareness, you have more self-leadership. Self-leadership is the ability to be present to yourself so that you can direct yourself. You don't just respond automatically to external stimulations. Okay? You are aware what's going on, and so that you're able to lead yourself. As someone said, you cannot lead anyone if you're not able to lead yourself in the first place. Okay? Or, as one of my mentors used to say, you cannot communicate with anyone if you're not able to communicate with yourself in the first place. Okay? So that's one effect. But the other effect, of course, is that now if you imagine that this thing is not only between two people, okay, but it's actually in a group of people, if you're able to create teams and entire organizations who have this kind of skill, then one thing that happens is that you promote what is called system awareness, or as we say in the fifth discipline, dialogue. Dialogue is when a group of people is really able to interact with each other, to have a real dialogue, because they're able to communicate profoundly with each other. And by doing so, you create a system awareness. What I'm trying to say is, if you imagine the project managers in ActiLife really being aware of what they were doing to themselves and to the entire system, because if they had been able to really listen to the environment, listen to the problems that the IT department was bringing, you know, when the IT people would come to them and say, dude, we don't know what to do first, or dude, our technical debt is increasing because we're constantly under pressure and we are constantly taking shortcuts and our products are worse and worse every day, okay? And if the project managers could really not just download this information, but actually integrate this information and try to provide with a real answer, then probably they would have had a better outcome. They would have found a better solution together. Because then again, the problem in ActiLife was not to make the IT department more efficient. The problem was making the entire organization more effective. That was the real problem. Okay? And what was preventing them from doing so was that they were not really listening to each other. Everybody was just looking and taking care of their own small island, okay, and their own individual goals. So dialogue is this kind of system awareness. And system awareness is the enabler of horizontal leadership. when a group of people is aware of what's going on, in that group of people, they can make real decisions together. They can lead themselves as a group and make decisions as a group, rather than being told what to do by someone who has authority on them. Okay? So it's really, really, really profound. Now, I don't know if you do Agile, if you like to do Agile or stuff like that, but this thing also relates to Agile approaches. And let me drink. So, as I told you, the soil in this metaphor represents the paradigms by which we operate, and the grass is what we call the artifacts. The artifacts is everything that is visible. So, for instance, a 50-inch display with the top sellers of the quarter is an artifact of a certain culture. Okay? It's an artifact of a certain culture. It exists because the culture has created it. Okay? So if you do Agile, I would like to point out a couple of things. Okay, so you know about this model. If you are lucky, the Agile practices alone will take you, if you're lucky, to factual listening. So what I'm saying is, in Agile, we do have the concept of inspect and adapt, right? Or remember, one of the things we say in Agile is that at regular intervals, the team stops and inspect themselves, and then they improve the way they work. So in theory, there is some feedback loop, actually multiple feedback loops integrated into the Agile way of working. So Agile is saying from time to time, stop, talk to each other, fix problems, improve, and then start over. Okay, that's what Agile is suggesting. But if you're not listening to each other, I'm sorry, you can stop all the time you want, but you will never make a good decision. Okay? So Agile gives you a framework in which certain things may happen, but then you need the soft skills to make it really happen. Okay? You need individual skills to make that happen. So Agile practices, if you're lucky, will take you most at that point. And forsaking the paradigms will actually kill your ability to be agile or to manifest agility. And we can do a simple test. Now, anybody in this room, do we have Scrum Masters? I'm one. I'm a certified Scrum Master, I confess. Is there anybody else? Okay, a few Scrum Masters, okay. And any of you remember the 5 values of Scrum? Sorry? Courage, yeah? Focus. Respect. Openness, commitment, and respect. Yeah, courage, we said, okay. So, you see, it took us, as a group, it took us at least 30 seconds to remember this stuff, because we tend to forget it all the time. Because we focus on what is visible, we focus on doing sprints, we focus on doing stand-up meetings, we focus on the task boards, we focus on the artifacts, and we forget the principles, we forget the paradigms by which this framework was created. But it's funny, because if you think about it, openness and respect are the foundation of good listening, right? So what I'm telling you is, even in certain Agile frameworks, this idea that you really need to communicate with each other is there if you really look. But then we forget about it. Okay? We don't really live the principles by which we are supposed to operate. And extreme programming is the same. Extreme programming has 5 values, and a couple of them are exactly the same as Scrum. Okay? So we forget about that. One more piece of information. This may disappoint you, but that, by the way, I have no benchmark on this. I did not do any statistical research and analysis, but I've been working with a lot of companies, and for a number of years now, and what I've noticed is that, as you can see, only 95% of companies asking for Agile coaching want, sorry, is that actually 95% of these companies, they want consultancy. So the difference between consultancy and coaching is very simple. A coach is someone who helps you improve your performance. Could be a sport coach or whatever, but coaching is about improving your performance. So an Agile coach is someone who helps you improve your performance in agility. That's what an Agile coach is supposed to do. An Agile consultant is someone that you hire to provide you with answers. Okay? This is the problem, what should we do? Okay? It's very different. And many, many companies, they don't want Agile coaching. They want someone who goes there and fix them, like ActiLife. Andrea, come here, fix these guys. Sorry, you have to think about the way you're working. Oh, you're coaching us, go away. Yeah, it's true. It happens many, many times. I mean, not a problem. I have a lot of clients, but still, it happens a lot of time. So what I say is we want to change, but only as you fix someone and you don't touch the existing power structures. Don't take privileges away from people high in the hierarchy. Okay? Fix someone else. Fix the problem. And as a consequence, 95% of so-called Agile coaches are consultants. If you live in a market where people ask for solutions, then what do? You provide solutions. Okay? Nobody's good or bad. I'm not saying, I'm just pointing at this dynamic, because of course this dynamic is basically supporting itself, right? So if the market asks for solution, people ask for solution. They just brand themselves as Agile coaches, but they are actually Agile consultants. So I'm just suggesting, just sell yourself as an Agile consultant. Be honest, okay? I provide Agile solutions. They might work or not, but that's what I do, okay? So, where can you start from if you want to try to bring your change into your organization? It's actually very simple. There are a few things that you can do. The first one is just start paying attention to how you interact with your colleagues and see if you can improve something in your interaction. You might want to have a buddy. So I'm not saying that you should practice this with someone who is not aware. So some people tell, oh yeah, I could try this with my wife. Don't. Don't try this with your wife. Okay. Don't. No. You're just going to piss her off. Okay. Don't. Unless you have an agreement. Unless you can tell your wife, is it okay if we practice this together? Are you interested in trying this together? But then it could be your wife, could be a colleague, could be a friend, could be a lover, I don't care. But it's someone who wants to practice with you, okay? The other thing you can do is be an example to others. If you can improve your listening and be an example to others. Sometimes people, people say, oh, very nice talking to you. Yeah, because I'm listening to you, okay? That's the reason. That's why it's nice talking to you. It's because I'm listening. And then, of course, you can also get coaching. So I think we're 1 minute late, so I'm just going to give you a brief recap. And it's a systemic thing. If you start from this, if you start from having these qualities inside of you, then you can improve your listening, you can reduce avijja, bring more clear knowledge, you can support new paradigms, you can create more dialogues, and this thing supports itself, basically. But it all starts with these qualities of each of you, in fact. So, I'm done. Thank you very much. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. If you want to keep in touch, these are my contact information, LinkedIn, Twitter, website, blah, blah, blah. And I'll stick around for a little while, but I have a flight to take later. Anyway, it was a pleasure to be here. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Yeah.